Good morning Year 9 and welcome to your tutorial on how to create an engaging opening for a piece of non-fiction writing. Before I start, I'd like you to take a moment to read the titles of the following 4 non-fiction books. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Silent Spring, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Long Walk to Freedom. All 4 of these books are bestsellers. Some of them have sold millions and millions of copies. And the reason that I've chosen to show you these titles is because they all demonstrate really good examples of engaging titles that hook the reader. If we look at Maya Angelou's novel, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, this is a lady's autobiography about a really challenging time she had growing up in America. And she references the metaphor of a caged bird to describe how she felt at certain points in her life. Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, a world-famous best-selling book about the challenge that man-made pollution or the impact of man-made pollution on our environment. And she brings that to life using the oxymoron, silent spring. It's quite eerie to think about spring, a time that we would associate with new life, possibly the sounds of birds and bees, being silent. These are 2 really effective examples of using imagery in non-fiction. That's going to be our focus for today's tutorial. Before I get started, in front of you for today's tutorial, you need your exercise book or a piece of lined paper and a pen, and that's all you need. Up until this point, either in this unit of work or possibly in your classes, you'll have been focusing on mastering the basics of De Forest. What I'd like to do today is encourage you to go beyond De Forest and to think about how to make your work really engaging using imagery. Now, I'm going to start by asking you to consider what I don't want you to do. First thing is, I'd like you to avoid using basic rhetorical questions. So don't encourage your reader to consider an idea in an alternative way. The second thing I'd like you to avoid is stating your opinion using basic vocabulary and literary devices like a basic rhetorical question or a basic bit of repetition. And I'd also like you to avoid using facts or statistics that are unfounded and do not reference a reputable source. Essentially, I don't want you to make up facts that sound a bit ridiculous or don't have a source that you can associate with them. So, for example, a source might be according to the Department of Health or according to the Department of Education or according to the BBC. You've got to be able to back up your facts or statistics for it to be somewhat believable. Let's look at a worked example of this. Here is the task. Find the words of a speech for a school debate on the following statement. We are becoming a nation of lazy people who prefer technology to exercise. Now, a basic way of opening a speech when you're thinking about this statement might be to say, or to use a rhetorical question such as, are we becoming lazy at home? You might also simply put your opinion and say, I agree or disagree with this statement, and I think most people would too. Now, there's nothing technically wrong with either of these sentences. They both have perfect punctuation, and there's absolutely no spelling errors at all, and they relate to the focus of the statement. However, they're not engaging. They don't hook you as a reader. Let's look at an example which is more engaging on the same statement so that we can compare. Are we a nation of lethargic loafers, or are we, in reality, as fit as fiddles. This is a much more advanced rhetorical question, and I'm going to pick this apart for you. So, firstly, this student has used ambitious vocabulary. So within their rhetorical question, they've referenced lazy people as lethargic loafers. Well, this is alliterative, which is lovely. Lethargic is when you're kind of really sort of tired and you can't be bothered to do anything, and loafer is sort of when you're a bit lazy or a bit idle. But both of those words are more ambitious than simply lazy. And lethargic suggests a lack of energy, so there's a little bit more subtlety to that word than simply lazy. What I most enjoy about this rhetorical question is the simile. Are we as fit as fiddles? Well, when you think about a fiddle, which is a violin, you think of energy and pace and movement. So what a fantastic concrete noun to compare the nation or to us as humans to. And we have contrast within this rhetorical question. On the one hand, we have these lethargic, kind of idle group of people, and on the other, we have this idea of the nation being very fit and very energized and very pacey. So we have contrast in this one sentence too. Much improved, much more engaging. Now, how can you go about creating your own engaging opening? Well, the task for today and what I'd like you to really focus on is starting with a simile, a metaphor, some clever personification or anaphora. Similes, metaphors, personification, oxymorons all fit within the literary category of imagery, and they really help to bring to life either the challenge or the change or the solution that you want to put forward in your speech or in your article. And when you create your simile or your metaphor today, I want you to encapsulate this change or this problem within that simile. And that's going to be the basis of your argument. Ideally, you're going to reference a key theme or idea within this. And I'll come on to that in a moment. We're going to consider the following writing stimulus or exam question. Example exam question. Our education system is unappreciated and undervalued in the UK. We need to invest more resources in schools and teachers in 2020. Write an article for your school newspaper in which you put forward your opinion on this statement. Now, I'm asking you to do quite a challenging thing today. I'm asking you to create a metaphor or a simile, and actually I want it to be quite sophisticated and I want it to include a theme. Before you start to create something that is metaphorical, you must write down what is literal. And what I mean by that is, what is your concrete opinion on this subject? Because you need to be very clear on what your argument is and what your opinion is before you apply a beautiful bit of imagery or a challenging piece of imagery. So I'd like you to just take a moment now just to brainstorm, what is your opinion about this exam question? Do you think the education system is unappreciated? Do you think we need to do something different within education? Do you think we need to invest more resources? I've put a couple of ideas on the board in the different colours, but I'd like you just to make a couple of notes about what is your opinion on this exam question. So, once we've put down on paper what is our opinion, what is our concrete opinion, we're then going to apply some imagery. And here are my tips for creating your own imagery. The first thing I want you to do is think of images which relate to the theme of the thing you are describing or the idea that you want to put forward. So the two images I put on the board, the one on the left is a door, the one on the right is a maze. And what I spent time doing prior to this tutorial is brainstorming what are the ideas or the themes that I associate with these images that I might then use to create a metaphor. Let's have a look. So I have a picture of a door. Now I'm breaking down the door and I'm thinking, well, I've got the keys, I've got the locks. And what do keys and locks literally do? Well, they create restriction, they stop me from getting in a door, they control who can come in and out of the door. Interesting. Potentially when you open the door, you have a sense of freedom, maybe that idea of a new opportunity or a new beginning, for example. And I need to think about how do these ideas or these aspects of the door relate to education. Having a great education, or possibly having an education that is quite poor because we haven't invested enough money or time in it. Okay, so spend some time brainstorming what are the parts of the door and the kind of themes and ideas that come into my mind when I think about a concrete door. I'm now going to show you how to turn that into metaphorical sentences or a metaphor. Okay, so the first one, education is the key to unlocking the golden doors of freedom. Okay, so in this sentence, I'm clearly a massive advocate for education. I think it absolutely should be valued, and we absolutely should invest in education. Not really a surprise, obviously, as your English teacher. But what I'm most interested in here is the idea that education helps us to unlock something. In the main body of my essay, I might be thinking about, what does it help to unlock? Does education help to unlock opportunities in terms of careers or going to university? If we don't have a great education, do we feel that we are possibly restricted from certain opportunities when we grow older, when we're adults, or we move into kind of stage of university or our first jobs in the world at large? I might also be thinking here about the idea of education giving us freedom. Freedom possibly in terms of our mindsets. If we have lots of knowledge from education, possibly we can make better decisions and be more informed in our choices as we grow older. I'm going to pause for a moment so you can read 2 more examples of metaphors related to this exam question. You might want to write down 1 or 2 of these so you have a model to look at for when you create your own. Okay, now it's your turn to create a metaphor or a simile. This is your task for this week. Create the opening paragraph to a speech which puts forward your opinion on this exam question. Climate change is an issue that has been ignored by governments of the past. It's important that we invest in climate change initiatives in 2020 and beyond. So your task this week is to create the opening to a speech. That's just one beautiful paragraph. What I'd like to see in this paragraph is a simile or a metaphor. You might also want to include something like anaphora, so repeating an idea or the first part of a sentence 3 times within the opening paragraph. And you might even want to extend your metaphor throughout your first paragraph or use personification as well. In the blue box on the board, I put some images that I find really helpful to think about when I'm creating a metaphor or a simile. You might want to think about the sea. Doors and windows, well, I've given you that example already. Time. Time is a fantastic abstract noun to personify. And in fact, Olivia, who is now in year 9, taught me about that when she was in year 7. So, personifying an abstract noun can be a fantastic and very engaging opening within an essay or a speech. You might want to think about nature as a metaphor or a maze as well. So that's your task for this week. Get your thesaurus out. If you don't have one at home, use an online thesaurus. Think about using ambitious words and create a beautiful simile or metaphor to encapsulate your opinion. Best of luck, Year 9.